Today on What to Do, we have a Chevy 2500 HD truck in the shop, and we're going to do the brakes. Tools for the job that you're going to need are 7/8 socket, a 15/16 socket, flathead screwdriver or a pick, some type of wire brush, or if not, you can get sandpaper. 10mm hex head with a ratchet drive, and also you may want to have an air gun because them hex heads are going to be a little tough getting off. Some type of long pry bar or long screwdriver, 2 zip ties and or a bungee cord, and then you're going to want something to cut the zip ties if you're not using a bungee cord. A C-clamp that will open up rather large for compressing your caliper. Not sure if I forgot anything, but let's jump into it. There's the truck right there. All right. Looking at the wheel here, you have this center cap here with these black caps. They look like lug nuts, but they're not. They're actually covering the lug nuts. Get a 15/16 socket, and you're gonna back these out. They're not gonna come all the way out, but you're gonna be able to back them out enough to where this whole center cap will fall off, just like this. See how they're all still in there? Once you have your cap off, you're gonna go one size down on your socket. You're gonna get a 7/8, and you're gonna remove all your lug nuts. Now that all the lug nuts are off, you can go ahead and remove the wheel. Now that your wheel is off, you can come around to the back of your caliper. All right, here's your top and here's your bottom. At the top of the caliper, you're going to see right there, you're going to see this little rubber grommet on here, these little rubber caps. All right, and we got one at the bottom. Get yourself a flathead or a little pick like that. Stick our little pick under there, and that's it. It just pops right out. And there's your hex head right there. To get those 2 hex heads out, you're going to need a 10mm hex head. I got one here on a ratchet, and you are going to turn them left to loosen them. So lefty-loosey, righty-tighty, they are not reverse thread. To make it get in here easier to take those bolts off, those hex heads, what you want to do is get in, turn the steering wheel so that you are turning your caliper out this way. That'll give you more clearance between the back of the caliper and the frame of the truck here. Turning these left to loosen them again, they're not reverse thread. I used my air tool to back them out, and now I'm just using the ratchet drive to get these the rest of the way out. And there it is right there. Same thing for the top one. Now, if you're struggling to get those hex heads off, because they are going to be really tight, you may need some type of a steel bar or something you can slide over your ratchet to give you extra torsion there, extra torque, so that you can break those free. If you got a small little ratchet drive, it's going to be tough for you to bust those loose, unless yours are already somewhat loose. But they are a little bit tight to get off, so I use an air tool, so they usually come right off for me, and then I use a ratchet. Now that we have our hex head bolts out, take your pry bar, because the caliper is going to be a little tight, stick it in the top and just pry up. There we go. And that'll loosen up your caliper enough to pull it off. And you're going to want to use 2 hands, so I got to set the camera down. You don't want this to fall and overextend your brake line or break it, then you'll have more problems. So you want to put 2 hands on this, and then get a bungee cord or something, and we're going to set this caliper up out of the way, out of the work area. If you're still finding it hard to get that caliper off, once you pry up on it a little bit, because it still might be a little bit tight, what you're gonna, I want to point this out because a lot of the other tutorials don't show this. So when you're pulling on it, you want to be careful putting your hands up here, in here, actually all these spots, because they are going to pinch your fingers when you're rocking this back and forth. All right. So basically, what you want to do to make your life a lot easier, if you look inside this hole here, you will see if I can zoom in on that. There it is. All right, you see the caliper here, and then you have your brake pad, and there's going to be a little gap right here. So you can take your screwdriver basically and stick it in there and pry, and what it's going to do, it's going to push that caliper back. It's going to recess it back in and take that pressure off of the pad in the rotor there. So you're actually going to pry that in, and that will loosen up this whole assembly enough for you to, let me zoom back out here. It'll loosen it up enough for you to pull this off. Now that I have my caliper off, what I did was I set it up here, all right? And I took a zip tie and I just zip tied it. Actually, I had to take 2 zip ties and I joined them together, and I zip tied it. So while I'm working down here, this doesn't take a chance of falling down and breaking this brake line here, because that'll just give you more of a headache. So take the extra couple seconds, get a bungee cord or something. Even if you set it up there and you're like, oh, it's gonna be fine, just for peace of mind, get 2 zip ties, zip it together. Now you can see that thing staying there, and I can work all I want here without jeopardizing this brake line and this thing falling. Okay, so now we're looking at our brake pads. The caliper's off. You should be able to just pull on these, and there's little grooves at the top. They're just gonna slide right out of those grooves like that. And same thing, sorry about all this sunlight, same thing at the bottom. Okay, now that the pads are off, we have these little tabs up here, these little retaining clips. All right, and you can pretty much pull these out with your fingers, but before you do that, what you want to do is pay attention or take a picture to exactly how these clips are in, because they do flip upside down and go different ways, and you don't want to put them in the wrong way. All right, you're going to have a bunch of these clips that come with your brakes. Just make sure that you're going to put it in exactly the same way that it comes out. See how this one over here has a long tab that comes out and the other side doesn't? Well, if you were to flip this upside down and go to the bottom, see, our long tab's out here, but if you flip this one upside down, it doesn't have the long tab on this side. Go back in the box and find the one that has this tab on this side. You can pretty much go ahead and pull these tabs out of there, just like that. After you pull out all your tabs on the front and the back sides, you want to take a little wire brush and you just want to clean inside of there, get any debris out of there, and careful you don't scratch up the rotor here, but just get any surface rust or dirt out of there, and do the same thing with the bottom. And then I'm going to take an air hose and blow all that dust out of there. Now that all your areas are clean, you can go ahead and put your tabs back in. Me personally, anytime I have metal touching metal, I always put some type of grease on the back, just to prevent any squeaking or anything like that. But these, you can pretty much just snap back up in there the same way that you pulled them out. Now, once you have your tabs back on the front and the ones on the back, you want to take out the brake pad, and it's basically, you're going to need the pad that forms the shape of your rotor. So if it looks like this, it's obviously going the wrong way. You want the pad facing the rotor, and the bend of it is going to be the same bend that the rotor has. And technically, it will slide right into those grooves where you put those clips. But before you do that, what you want to do is you want to put a little bit of grease on this end, and same thing on the other end here. All right, so you're going to just grease up your ends here before you slide them in, because this is where you would get some squeaking on your pads. If you are setting your pad in there, look along the rotor and make sure that it's seated firmly and you don't see any gaps. If you do, what you might have to do is push up on the bottom of this pad and push in, okay? Because it may slide right in and you might think it's on, but if you look on the side and you see a gap at the bottom or at the top, then I would recommend putting the top in first, and then the bottom kind of push up on and push in, so that it firmly seats and you don't have any gaps between your pad and your rotor. Another thing I want to point out that a lot of the other brake videos don't point out. So let's say you're putting your back pad back on, right? Now this is supposed to be sitting almost flush, all right? You might feel a little bit of an edge here, but see this back pad? How you can see almost a whole ½ inch of pad, and you're gonna freak out thinking that you don't have it in right. But this rotor probably had shifted, and all you have to do is push in on the rotor right there. See? The rotor. There it is. See? So when you turn that steering wheel, this rotor may have shifted just a little bit, because you have the lug nuts off here, and it's loose. So just push on your rotor a little bit, don't panic, and there you go. That should line right back up for you. If you're doing this by yourself and you're having a hard time getting the caliper over because your rotor keeps shifting, one little tip you can do is take one lug nut and put it on to the back side over here so that it keeps the pressure on the rotor and keeps the pads aligned, and that'll help you not struggle getting the caliper on as much if your rotor's shifting. But we're going to cut our zip tie first, and then we have to compress our caliper here to get these to recess in. While your caliper is still sitting up there on the rim, take the old brake pad. Don't use a new one. Take the old one and just set it in there. Okay? Because what we're going to do is we're going to take that C-clamp, we're going to put it over here, clamp it, and we're going to tighten it in so that it compresses that caliper. Because what you don't want to do is put the C-clamp on this itself, because once you start scratching these up or you break these, forget it. You're going to either have no brakes or you're just going to tear up the whole system. You're going to run into all kinds of problems. You don't want to damage these. So if you already threw out your pads that quickly, then get a block of wood or something that you can put over top of this while you compress these in. That's what it looks like. I have my clamp up here over this top one first, so I'm going to go ahead and crank that in. I am going to need both hands. And then once that compresses in, I will lower this down to the bottom one and compress that in, and then we can take this off. Okay, everything is compressed in, and what I did, again, like I said earlier, anywhere I have metal touching metal, and these are going to be touching the back of the pads, I put some grease on all the areas here that are going to be touching this side of the pad and the other side of the pad. Alright, so if you have some grease or lubricant, you want to put it on these back sides here. Now we can go ahead and we can lower this down over top of our pads. And that was the reason why we compressed these in, so that this will slide over those pads. If you still have them out a little bit, you may have a tough time fitting them over here. And there we have it. Went on nice and easy. Now you can go ahead and try to thread in your hex head to the back. Start with the top one. That's going to be the easiest. You're going to have to wiggle this caliper a little bit to line it up. But you'll feel it drop in. Alright, top one's on, now we'll do the bottom one. And there it is. The brakes are all done. So hopefully this tip helped you out, and if it did, please hit subscribe below and give me a like. I do these videos daily, and I'm still trying to get my subscribers up. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll see you next time.